The sound of splitting wood echoed through the Arizona mountains as Dalton Langford brought his axe down with practiced precision. The October chill of 1883 biting at his exposed forearms, despite the exertion heating his blood. He had been working since dawn, replenishing his woodshed for the coming winter months, when something made him pause mid-swing. A sound, soft and out of place, drifted from behind the stacked timber. Setting down his axe, he moved quietly around the side of the shed, his muscular frame tensing as years of living alone in these mountains had taught him caution. What he found made him stop in his tracks. A woman lay curled among the split logs, her thin dress torn and dirty, her face pale except for the flush of fever on her cheeks. Dark hair matted with pine needles framed features that would have been pretty if not for the hollowness of hunger and exhaustion. She stirred at his approach, eyes flying open in terror as she scrambled backward, pressing herself against the rough wooden wall. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, I will leave. I just needed somewhere warm for the night. I will go right now." Dalton held up both hands, keeping his distance. At 6'3", with shoulders broadened by years of manual labor, he knew he could be intimidating. His dark hair hung past his collar and several days of stubble shadowed his jaw. "Easy now, you are hurt." "I am fine." She tried to stand, but her legs buckled beneath her. Dalton caught her before she hit the ground, feeling how light she was, how her body trembled with weakness. "When did you last eat?" he asked, his deep voice gentler than his appearance might suggest. She turned her face away, and he saw tears streak through the dirt on her cheeks. "3 days, maybe 4. I lost count." Without another word, Dalton lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward his cabin. She was too weak to protest beyond a feeble attempt to push against his chest. "I cannot pay you," she said. "I have nothing. Did I ask for payment?" He shouldered open his door and brought her inside, setting her carefully on the only chair by his fireplace. The cabin was simple but clean. One large room with a bed in the corner, a table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with supplies, and a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. He stirred the coals and added wood, bringing the fire back to life. She watched him with wary eyes as he moved to his stores, pulling out bread, dried meat, and a jar of preserves. He poured water into a pot and set it to heat. "Slowly," he warned as he handed her a piece of bread. "Your stomach will rebel if you eat too fast." She took tiny bites, and he could see her fighting the urge to devour it all at once. While she ate, he studied her more carefully. She was young, probably early 20s, with delicate features and hands that showed signs of hard work despite their small size. Her dress had once been nice, but it was now torn and stained beyond recognition of its original color. "What is your name?" he asked, settling onto the edge of his bed since she occupied his only chair. She hesitated, as if even her name was a secret she was afraid to give. "Priscilla." "Priscilla Hart, Dalton Langford." He watched her take another small bite. "What brings you to my mountain, Priscilla Hart?" Her hands began to shake, and she set down the bread. "I was traveling with a wagon train from Kansas. We were heading to California, my aunt and I. She was all I had left after my parents died last year, but there was sickness." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Cholera. It swept through the train so fast. My aunt was gone in 2 days. Others too. The train master said we had to keep moving, could not afford to wait for those too sick to travel. When I got sick, they left me at Fort McDowell, said there was a doctor there, that the town would take care of me. But they did not," Dalton finished, his jaw tightening. She shook her head. "The doctor tried. He was a good man, but I had no money, and his wife made it clear I could not stay once the fever broke. She said they were not running a charity house." I tried to find work, but every respectable place wanted references I could not provide, and the other places wanted things I would not give. Her eyes met his, fierce despite her weakness. I would rather starve than sell myself. No one is asking you to. Dalton stood and poured the now hot water into a cup, adding herbs from a pouch on his shelf. Drink this. It will help with the fever. She accepted the cup, inhaling the steam. Why are you helping me? You do not know me. I could be a thief or worse. A slight smile tugged at his mouth. If you are a thief, you are not a very good one, sleeping in a man's woodshed in plain sight. And as for worse, I have lived in these mountains for 5 years. I know the look of someone running from bad circumstances versus someone who is bad circumstances. You are the former. They sat in silence while she sipped the tea and ate small portions of what he offered. The cabin grew warmer as the fire built, and color began to return to her face. When she swayed in the chair, exhaustion overcoming her, Dalton made a decision. "You can stay here tonight," he said. "Take the bed. I will sleep on the floor by the fire." "I cannot take your bed," she protested weakly. "You can and you will. We can discuss what comes next in the morning when you are stronger." He pulled a blanket from a chest and spread it on the floor, adding another for cushioning. "Go on now. You are about to fall over." Priscilla looked at the bed longingly, then back at him. "You are a strange man, Dalton Langford, so I have been told." She rose unsteadily and made her way to the bed, sitting on the edge. "Thank you," she said softly. "I did not think there were men like you left in this world. Rest now. Tomorrow is soon enough for talking." She lay down, and within minutes her breathing deepened into sleep. Dalton banked the fire and lay down on his makeshift bed, but sleep did not come easily. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of another person in his space for the first time in years. It should have felt strange, invasive even. Instead, it felt right in a way he could not explain. When dawn broke, Dalton woke to find Priscilla already up, standing by the fireplace with her back to him. She had found his wash basin and cleaned her face and hands and braided her hair, though she still wore the same ruined dress. She turned when she heard him move, and he saw she had been crying. "I have been thinking," she said before he could speak. "I need to be practical. I have no money, no prospects, and winter is coming. Fort McDowell made it clear I am not welcome there, and I have nowhere else to go." She took a shaky breath. "If you would let me stay here, I could work for my keep. I can cook and clean, mend clothes, tend a garden. I would earn my place, I promise. I would not be a burden." Dalton sat up, running a hand through his tangled hair. "And if I say yes, what happens when spring comes?" "Then I will leave if you want me to, with enough strength to make it to the next town and find proper work." Her chin lifted. "I am not asking for charity, Mr. Langford. I am asking for a chance to survive the winter." He stood, his full height making the cabin feel smaller. Outside, the sun was just beginning to paint the sky pink and gold. "I live alone because I choose to," he said slowly. "After the war, after seeing what men can do to each other, I wanted peace, silence. These mountains gave me that. I understand." Her shoulders sagged with disappointment. "I should not have presumed. You have already been so kind. If you could spare just a little food, I will be on my way." I was not finished. His voice stopped her from turning away. "What I was going to say is that I live alone by choice, but that does not mean I want you to leave. These mountains are beautiful, but they are also lonely. If you want to stay the winter, you are welcome to. But not as my servant or someone working off a debt, as a guest, as someone who needs help and I am able to give it." Priscilla stared at him. "I cannot accept that. It would not be right. Please let me work for my place here. I need to feel useful, not like some charity case." Dalton considered this, understanding the pride he heard in her voice. "All right then. You can help with the cooking and such if it makes you feel better. But first, You need to regain your strength. That means rest, good food, and no heavy labor for at least a week. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. You will not regret this, I promise. Over the following days, Priscilla kept her word about resting, though Dalton could tell it chafed at her. She would sit by the fire, mending tears in his shirts with neat, tiny stitches, or preparing vegetables for their meals while he worked outside. He brought in a deer on the third day, and she helped him preserve the meat, showing surprising skill with a knife. My father was a butcher, she explained when he commented on it. Before he got sick, he taught me his trade, said a woman should know how to take care of herself. Sadness flickered across her face. He died trying to provide for us, worked himself to exhaustion, and pneumonia took him quick. Mama followed 6 months later. I think she died of a broken heart as much as anything. I am sorry. Dalton hung strips of venison to smoke. Loss is a hard burden. You speak like someone who knows. She glanced at him. The war you mentioned, his hand stilled. I enlisted young and stupid, thinking it would be an adventure. Came home having seen things no man should see, having done things no man should do. My family did not know what to make of me after. I did not know what to make of myself. So I came west, kept moving until I found these mountains and built this cabin with my own 2 hands. That was 5 years ago. Do you ever regret it, leaving your family? Sometimes. But they are better off without me there, a constant reminder of the war. My brothers write occasionally. They are good men, married with children now, living the lives I should have lived. He started hanging the meat again. But regret is a useless emotion. We do what we must to survive, and we live with the consequences. A comfortable silence fell between them. Over the next weeks, as Priscilla grew stronger, they fell into an easy routine. She would rise first, starting the fire and putting coffee on to boil. He would return from checking his traps to find breakfast waiting, and they would eat together, sharing small details about their lives. She told him about growing up in Kansas, about the wagon train and her dreams of California. He told her about the mountains, about tracking animals and reading weather in the sky. One morning in late October, Dalton woke to find snow falling softly outside. Priscilla stood at the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the white flakes drift down. First snow of the season, he said, coming to stand beside her. It will melt off by afternoon, but the heavy snows will come soon. It is beautiful. She hugged herself, and he noticed she was still wearing that same dress, thin and inadequate for mountain winters. I never saw much snow in Kansas. Nothing like this. That afternoon, after the snow had indeed melted, Dalton rode down to Fort McDowell. He returned several hours later with packages tied to his saddle. Priscilla met him outside, curiosity written on her face. What did you get? Supplies for winter. He handed her a wrapped bundle, including this. She unwrapped it to find fabric, sturdy wool in a deep blue color, along with thread, needles, and buttons. Dalton, I cannot accept this. You cannot make it through winter in that dress, he said practically. And before you argue, remember that I would have bought supplies anyway. This is just sensible planning. Then I will make you new shirts as well, she said firmly. It is only fair, he smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. Deal. They worked together in the evenings now, Priscilla sewing by lamplight while Dalton carved or mended tack. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in companionable quiet. Dalton found himself looking forward to these hours, to the domestic comfort of another presence in his cabin. One night, Priscilla set aside her sewing and looked at him seriously. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really let me stay? The truth, not just kindness to a stranger. Dalton set down the piece of wood he had been working. When I found you in that woodshed, you looked like I felt after the war, lost, broken, nowhere to go and no one to turn to. I knew what it was like to feel that way, and I could not walk away from it. He met her eyes. And selfishly, you reminded me that there are still good things in this world worth protecting. Priscilla's eyes glistened with tears. I was ready to die that night. I had walked for 3 days with no food, no water, no hope. I lay down in your woodshed thinking I would just go to sleep and not wake up, and that would be fine, better than being alone anymore. A tear slipped down her cheek. But then you found me. You gave me hope again. You gave me everything. You gave me something too, he said quietly. A reason to be more than just a hermit hiding from the world. The first real snow came in early November, 3 feet falling overnight and blocking the cabin door. Dalton had to dig them out, his powerful shoulders making short work of the heavy snow. Priscilla watched from the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, admiring the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt despite the cold. "You are staring," he called without turning around. She felt heat rush to her face. "I am just making sure you do not overwork yourself." He glanced back at her, amusement in his eyes. "Sure you are." Later that day, after the path was cleared, Dalton taught her how to snowshoe. She fell repeatedly, laughing each time he hauled her back to her feet. Her laughter rang through the trees, bright and clear, and Dalton realized he had not heard that sound in far too long. "You are terrible at this," he teased as she fell for the 5th time. "I grew up in Kansas," she protested, accepting his hand. "We did not have snow like this. Maybe I should carry you everywhere instead. You would get tired of that quickly." He pulled her to her feet, and for a moment they stood close, her hand still in his. "I do not think I would," he said softly. Priscilla's breath caught. She had been trying to ignore the feelings growing inside her, telling herself it was just gratitude, just the natural result of spending so much time alone together. But the way he looked at her now, the way her heart raced when he was near, that was something more than gratitude. "Dalton," she whispered, "I know." He released her hand and stepped back. "I know this is complicated. You are here because you have nowhere else, and I do not want you to feel obligated to anything." "Is that what you think this is?" she gestured between them. "Obligation, is it not?" She wanted to say no, wanted to tell him that somewhere between the first morning and now, she had fallen in love with this quiet, gentle man who had saved her life. But fear held her tongue. What if she was wrong? What if come spring he would be glad to see her go? "We should get back inside," she said instead. "The temperature is dropping." That night, an awkwardness hung between them that had not been there before. They ate dinner in near silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the cabin. When Priscilla retired to the bed, Dalton lay on his floor pallet staring at the ceiling, cursing himself for being a coward. Days passed. The snow deepened, and they were truly isolated now, cut off from Fort McDowell and the rest of civilization until spring thaw. They worked together, lived together, but something had changed. The easy comfort was gone, replaced by a careful distance neither of them wanted but neither knew how to bridge. One night in late November, a blizzard screamed outside, rattling the windows and howling down the chimney. Priscilla lay in bed, unable to sleep for the cold despite the blankets piled on top of her. The fire had died down and she could see her breath in the dark cabin. "Priscilla," Dalton's voice came from the darkness. "Are you awake?" "Yes, it is freezing." She heard him move, then felt the edge of the bed dip as he sat down. "The temperature has dropped fast. That fire will not last the night without more wood, and I do not want to use up our stores too quickly." He paused. "We could share body heat, just for warmth." I would stay on top of the blankets. She should say no. It was improper, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with the cold, but her teeth were chattering, and she could hear the genuine concern in his voice. "All right." He lay down on top of the blankets, maintaining a respectful distance. But even through the layers, she could feel the heat radiating from him, and gradually the shivering stopped. The wind continued to howl, but inside the cabin, wrapped in darkness and warmth, something shifted again. "Dalton," she whispered. "Yes. That day in the snow when you said you knew things were complicated. Did you mean that you have feelings for me? Or that you were worried I had feelings for you?" Silence stretched out, broken only by the storm. "Then, both, neither. I do not know any more, Priscilla. All I know is that I have not been able to stop thinking about you since the day I found you. But you came here with nothing, running for your life. The last thing you need is me putting pressure on you to feel something you do not." She rolled over to face him in the darkness. "What if I do feel something, do you?" His voice was rough. "Or do you think you do because I saved you, because I gave you shelter? How can you know the difference?" It was a fair question, one she had asked herself 100 times. "I thought of that. For weeks I questioned every feeling. Every time my heart raced when you walked in the door, I told myself it was gratitude, or relief at being safe, or just loneliness." She reached out, finding his hand in the darkness. "But then I realized something. When I think about spring coming, about leaving here, it feels like dying all over again. Not because I am afraid of being alone, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. That is not gratitude. That is love." Dalton's hand tightened on hers. "I am not an easy man to love. I have demons, Priscilla. Nightmares from the war. Days when I can barely stand to be inside my own head. I came to these mountains to get away from people because I did not trust myself around them anymore. And yet you have been nothing but gentle with me, nothing but kind. Maybe you needed someone to save as much as I needed to be saved." He pulled her close, blankets and all, wrapping his arms around her. She tucked her head under his chin, feeling his heart pounding against her cheek. "I am terrified," he admitted. "Terrified I will ruin this somehow. That I will hurt you without meaning to." "I am terrified too," she whispered. "But I think that means it is real. If we were not scared, it would not matter enough to frighten us." They fell asleep like that, holding each other as the blizzard raged outside. When Priscilla woke in the morning, pale sunlight was streaming through the window, and Dalton was still there, awake and watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning." She smiled, suddenly shy. "Is this strange?" "Probably." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Do you want it to be?" "No." She leaned into his touch. "I want this to be real." "So do I." He kissed her then, soft and careful, as if she might break. She kissed him back, pouring all the feelings she had been holding inside into that moment. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "We should talk about this," Dalton said. "About what it means, about the future." "Later," Priscilla said, pulling him back down. "Right now, I just want to be happy. Is that all right? More than all right?" The days that followed felt like a dream. They moved through their routines with new awareness, finding excuses to touch, to be close. Dalton told her stories about the mountains, about the animals he tracked, and the seasons that shaped life at this altitude. Priscilla told him about her childhood dreams, about the books she had read, and the life she had imagined before her parents died. One afternoon, while Dalton was out checking his trap lines, Priscilla explored the cabin more thoroughly than she had before. In a trunk under the bed, she found a bundle of letters tied with string. She should not have looked, but curiosity got the better of her. They were from his family, from his brothers mostly, talking about their lives, asking him to come home. The most recent was dated 6 months ago. When Dalton returned, she was sitting at the table with the letters in front of her. "I am sorry," she said immediately. "I should not have snooped, but Dalton, your family misses you. Why do you not write back?" He stood in the doorway, snow melting on his shoulders. Because I do not know what to say. They want the brother they remember, the boy who left for war. That person does not exist anymore. But the person you are now exists, and he is worth knowing." She stood, crossing to him. "They love you. That does not stop just because you changed." "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is. Maybe we make it complicated because we think we do not deserve to be loved as we are." She took his hands. "Write to them. Tell them you are well. Tell them you are not alone anymore. Give them that at least." That evening, by lamplight, Dalton wrote to his brothers. It was short and awkward, but it was honest. He told them about the cabin, about the life he had built. And he told them about Priscilla, about the woman who had stumbled into his life and changed everything. "There," he said, sealing the letter. "I will ride down to Fort McDowell when the weather clears and post it." Priscilla kissed his cheek. "I am proud of you. Do not be, not yet. I do not know if I can be who they want me to be. Be who you are. That is all anyone can ask." Christmas came, marked only by the date on Dalton's calendar. They had no decorations, no special meal planned, but Priscilla was determined to make it special. While Dalton was outside, she used scraps of fabric to make small decorations, hanging them around the cabin. She made a cake using their precious stores of sugar and dried fruit, hiding it in the cold cellar until evening. When Dalton came inside, he stopped in the doorway, staring at the transformed cabin. Red and blue fabric garlands hung from the rafters, and small sachets of pine needles gave the air a festive scent. "What is all this?" he asked. "Christmas." Priscilla smiled at him. "We may be stuck on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, but that does not mean we cannot celebrate." "Priscilla, you did not have to do this. I wanted to. This is the first Christmas in 2 years I have not been alone or miserable. That deserves recognition." She pulled him to the table. "Sit. I made something special." The cake was lopsided and perhaps a bit dry, but it was the best thing Dalton had tasted in years. They ate it slowly, savoring every bite, and talked late into the night about past Christmases, about traditions and memories. "I have something for you," Dalton said finally. He retrieved a bundle from his pack and handed it to her. "It is not much." Inside was a pair of gloves, beautifully made from soft leather lined with rabbit fur. Priscilla held them to her chest, overwhelmed. "When did you make these?" "At night when you were sleeping." "I have been working on them for a few weeks." He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly self-conscious. "I noticed your hands get cold when you are working outside. They are perfect." She slipped them on, flexing her fingers. "I love them, but I did not make you anything. You made me a cake. And you made this place feel like home again. That is gift enough." She kissed him, slow and sweet. "Merry Christmas, Dalton." "Merry Christmas, Priscilla." January brought the deepest snows and the coldest temperatures. They were truly trapped now, the passes impassable, the trail to Fort McDowell buried under 8 feet of snow. But inside the cabin they were warm and content. They had plenty of food, plenty of wood, and each other. One night as they lay together in bed, Priscilla asked, "What happens in the spring?" Dalton pulled her closer. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to stay here with you if you will have me." "If I will have you," he laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "Priscilla, I want you to stay more than I have wanted anything in my life, but I need you to be sure. Life up here is hard. We are isolated, cut off from society. There are no shops, no social gatherings, none of the things a woman might want. I do not need those things. I need you." She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "I know this life is hard. I have lived it these past months, but I have also never been happier, never felt more alive or more loved. Why would I give that up for shops and social gatherings? You might feel differently in a few years. You might resent me for keeping you up here. Or I might wake up every day grateful that you found me sleeping in your woodshed and gave me a second chance at life." She touched his face, feeling the rough stubble under her fingers. "I love you, Dalton Langford. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love how you care for the animals and the land. I love how you look at me like I am precious. I do not want a different life. I want this one with you." Dalton pulled her down for a kiss that quickly grew heated. "Marry me," he said when they broke apart. "I do not have a ring, and I cannot promise you anything but hard work and mountain winters. But marry me, Priscilla. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I am worthy of your love." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." They made love for the first time that night, discovering each other slowly, reverently. Dalton was careful with her, his massive hands gentle as he explored her body. Priscilla had been nervous, unsure, but he made her feel beautiful and desired and cherished. Afterward they lay tangled together, skin to skin, hearts beating in synchrony. "I never thought I could have this," Dalton said into the darkness. "After the war I thought I was broken beyond repair, but you fixed me, Priscilla. You made me whole again." "You were never broken," she said. "Just wounded. There is a difference, and wounds can heal given time and care." February passed in a haze of happiness. They made plans for the future, talking about expanding the cabin, maybe adding another room. Priscilla wanted to plant a garden in the spring, real vegetables and maybe some flowers. Dalton talked about building her a proper kitchen, with a real stove instead of just the fireplace. "We could get married in Fort McDowell," Priscilla suggested one morning, "when the trail's clear. Have a proper ceremony." "Or we could get married here," Dalton countered. "Just us, the mountain, and God. That seems more fitting somehow." "I like that," she smiled. "Just us." They made their vows one morning in early March as the sun rose over the mountains. They had no preacher, no witnesses, just their own words spoken from the heart. Dalton promised to love her, protect her, and honor her for all his days. Priscilla promised to stand by his side, through hardship and joy, in sickness and health, for as long as they both lived. They sealed their promises with a kiss as the sunrise painted the snow gold and pink. It was simple and perfect and entirely theirs. As March progressed, the snow began to melt, revealing the earth beneath. Streams swelled with runoff, and the first hardy flowers pushed through the remaining snow. Dalton and Priscilla worked together to clear the garden plot, turning the soil and planning what to plant. "We should go down to Fort McDowell soon," Dalton said one afternoon. "We need seeds for the garden, and I want to post that letter to my brothers. Also, we need supplies for the cabin repairs I want to do." Priscilla nodded, but she felt nervous about returning to the town that had turned her away. "Will they remember me?" "Probably. Small towns have long memories." He squeezed her hand. "But you are not alone anymore. You have me, and I will not let anyone treat you poorly." They made the trip a week later, the trail muddy but passable. Priscilla rode behind Dalton on his horse, her arms wrapped around his waist. As they approached Fort McDowell, she felt him tense, his protective instincts rising. The town was larger than Priscilla remembered, probably a few hundred people. They hitched the horse outside the general store and went inside. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with suspicious eyes, looked up from his counter, and his expression soured when he recognized Priscilla. "I do not serve her kind," he said flatly. Dalton stepped forward, placing himself between Priscilla and the man. "What kind would that be?" "Vagrant women with no morals and no money. She came through here last fall looking for handouts. I run a respectable business." "She is my wife," Dalton said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And she has my money to spend. Now, are you going to serve us, or should I take my business elsewhere?" The proprietor's eyes widened. He clearly recognized Dalton, probably from previous supply runs. "Your wife? I did not realize." "I apologize, Mr. Langford. Of course I will serve you," Do not apologize to me, apologize to her." The man looked at Priscilla, his face red. "I apologize, madam. I spoke out of turn." "Thank you," Priscilla said quietly, though her hands were shaking. Dalton took one in his, steadying her. They purchased what they needed, Dalton never leaving her side. As they were leaving, they encountered the doctor who had treated Priscilla, the one whose wife had turned her out. "Miss Hart," the doctor blinked in surprise. "I wondered what became of you. I heard you had left town." "Mrs. Langford now," Priscilla corrected. "And I am well, thank you for asking." "I am glad to hear it. I apologize for my wife's harshness. She has her own troubles, her own fears, but that is no excuse for turning out someone in need." "It is past now," Priscilla said. "I harbor no ill will." As they rode back up the mountain, Priscilla was quiet. Dalton pulled the horse to a stop at a scenic overlook and helped her down. "Talk to me," he said. "I can feel you thinking." "That man, the shopkeeper, he looked at me with such contempt, like I was dirt beneath his feet. And I realized that is how so many people saw me after I lost everything. Not as a person who had suffered loss, but as a problem to be dealt with or ignored." She turned to him. "But you never looked at me that way. From the very first moment you saw me as human. As someone deserving of dignity and care. Do you know how rare that is? I saw someone who needed help. That is all." He cupped her face in his hands. "But I also saw someone strong, someone who had been knocked down by life but kept fighting. That kind of strength is worth respecting." "I love you so much," she whispered. "I love you too, more than I have words to express." They returned to the cabin as afternoon shadows lengthened. Over the next weeks they worked hard, preparing for summer. Dalton made repairs to the cabin roof while Priscilla planted the garden. They added chickens, purchasing them from a farmer near Fort McDowell, and Priscilla loved having the birds around, collecting eggs each morning. In May, a letter arrived from Dalton's brothers. Priscilla watched him read it, seeing emotions flicker across his face. When he finished, he handed it to her silently. The letter was warm, full of relief and happiness that Dalton was well. His brothers wrote about their lives, their children, and asked dozens of questions about Priscilla. Most importantly, they told him they loved him, that they had never stopped loving him, and that he was welcome home anytime. "They want to meet me," Priscilla said, smiling. "They want to meet you very much. My brother Joseph says, and I quote, 'She must be an angel to put up with your grumpy self.'" Dalton's lips twitched. "He is not wrong. You are not grumpy, serious maybe, thoughtful, but not grumpy. You have never seen me after a night of bad dreams." She took his hand. "Actually, I have. Several times. You wake up shouting and I hold you until you calm down. You shake for an hour afterward, but you are never grumpy. You are scared and hurt, and there is a difference." He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do. You deserve happiness and love and peace, and I intend to give you all of that." Summer transformed the mountains into a green paradise. The garden flourished under Priscilla's care, and they had fresh vegetables for the first time in months. Dalton took her fishing in the streams, taught her to shoot so she could defend herself when he was away, and showed her the secret places he had discovered in his years on the mountain. One afternoon in July, Priscilla realized her monthly bleeding had not come. She waited another week, not wanting to say anything until she was sure. When a second week passed, she could no longer deny it. "Dalton," she said that evening as they sat outside watching the sunset, "I think I am pregnant." His head whipped around. "You think?" "I am 3 weeks late. I have been feeling sick in the mornings, and certain smells that never bothered me before are suddenly unbearable." She bit her lip. "I think we are going to have a baby." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen on him. He whooped, actually whooped, picked her up and spun her around. A baby, he kept saying. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? She asked, laughing at his reaction. Happy, Priscilla, I am terrified and thrilled and amazed all at once. A baby, our baby. He set her down gently, his hands going to her still flat stomach. When? I think late January or early February. I am not certain. We need to prepare. A cradle, more supplies, you will need special food, and what if something goes wrong? Maybe we should be in Fort McDowell closer to your time where the doctor is. The words tumbled out, and Priscilla could see the worry creeping into his eyes. Breathe, she said, taking his hands. We have months to prepare. And women have been having babies in remote places since the beginning of time. We will be fine. But as her pregnancy progressed, Dalton's worry grew. He fussed over her constantly, not wanting her to lift anything heavy or work too hard. He made her rest multiple times a day, brought her food even when she was not hungry, and checked on her several times each night to make sure she was comfortable. I am pregnant, not dying, she finally said in exasperation one afternoon in August. You need to relax. I cannot relax. What if something happens to you? What if the baby comes early or there are complications? I would not be able to live with myself if something happened to you. She softened, seeing the genuine fear in his eyes. Come here. She pulled him down to sit beside her. I know you are scared. I am scared too, but you cannot protect me from everything, no matter how much you want to. All we can do is take reasonable precautions and trust that things will work out. I found you dying in my woodshed. Forgive me if I do not trust things to work out. But things did work out. You saved me and I got better and we fell in love. That is things working out, Dalton. Yes, bad things happen, but good things happen too, and we have to have faith in the good. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. They compromised. Priscilla agreed to take things easier, and Dalton agreed to stop hovering quite so much. As fall approached, they began preparing for the baby in earnest. Dalton built a beautiful cradle from wood he carved himself, sanding it smooth and rubbing it with oil until it glowed. Priscilla sewed tiny clothes from soft fabric, marveling at how small the garments were. In October, exactly 1 year after Dalton had found her in the woodshed, they sat together on the cabin porch watching the leaves turn gold and red. You remember what today is? Priscilla asked. How could I forget? This time last year I was chopping wood and found a stubborn woman stealing space in my woodshed. She elbowed him gently. I was not stealing, I was borrowing, without asking. Details. She leaned against him. Would you change anything? If you could go back to that day, knowing everything that would happen, would you do anything differently? Not a single thing. He kissed the top of her head. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You brought life back to this mountain and to me. You gave me everything, she said softly. A home, safety, love, a future I never thought I would have. I was ready to die that night, Dalton, and you gave me a reason to live. We saved each other, he said. That is what love does. It saves us from ourselves, from our pasts, from the loneliness that eats at our souls. You saved me as much as I saved you. Winter came again, but this year they faced it together as husband and wife preparing for their child. The cabin felt smaller somehow, more cramped, but also cozier. Dalton had built a larger bed so they could sleep more comfortably, and Priscilla had made new curtains and cushions. As Christmas approached, Priscilla was huge, her belly stretched tight with the baby. She moved slowly, carefully, and Dalton was constantly at her elbow, ready to catch her if she stumbled. I feel like a whale, she complained one morning, trying and failing to put on her boots. Dalton knelt before her, helping her with the laces. You look beautiful. You are obligated to say that. You are the one who got me this way. He looked up at her, his eyes serious. I am saying it because it is true. You are carrying our child, Priscilla. Nothing is more beautiful than that." She softened, running her fingers through his hair. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "Practice. Lots of practice." On Christmas morning, she woke to sharp pains in her back. At first, she thought it was just the usual pregnancy discomfort, but as the day progressed, the pains became more regular, more intense. "Dalton," she said quietly, not wanting to alarm him, "I think the baby is coming." He dropped the wood he had been carrying, his face going pale. "Now, but it is too early. You said February. Babies come when they want to come, not when we expect them to." Another pain gripped her and she gasped. "We need to prepare." Dalton moved into action, his military training taking over. He had been preparing for this moment for months, reading every book on childbirth he could find, questioning the doctor in Fort McDowell until the man probably wanted to strangle him. He had clean linens ready, water heating, everything they might need. The labor was long and difficult. Priscilla labored through Christmas Day and into the night, Dalton at her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, whispering encouragement when she was sure she could not continue. "I cannot do this," she sobbed at one point, exhausted beyond bearing. "I cannot." "Yes, you can," Dalton said firmly. "You are the strongest person I know. You survived losing everything. You survived walking through the wilderness alone. You can survive this. I am right here with you. Do not leave me," she begged. "Never, I will never leave you." Just after midnight, as Christmas became the day after, their son was born. He came into the world squalling, loud and angry and very much alive. Dalton cut the cord with shaking hands, then wrapped the baby in soft blankets and placed him in Priscilla's arms. "He is perfect," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Look at him, Dalton. We made this perfect little person." Dalton was crying too, unashamed of the tears. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. I cannot believe this is real." They named him James, after Dalton's father, and he had his mother's dark hair and his father's strong lungs. He nursed hungrily, and Priscilla marveled at the feeling of her son dependent on her for everything. "I was so scared," Dalton admitted later, after Priscilla and the baby were both sleeping. He sat beside the bed, keeping watch, unable to look away from his new family. "So scared I would lose you." But Priscilla was strong, stronger than either of them had realized. She recovered quickly from the birth, and within a week was up and moving around the cabin, though Dalton still fussed over her constantly. James grew quickly, filling the cabin with noise and life. Dalton was a devoted father, walking the floor with his son when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding the baby and staring at him in wonder. "I never thought I could be a father," he told Priscilla one night. "After the war, after everything I had done and seen, I thought I would ruin any child unlucky enough to be mine." "Look at him," Priscilla said, nodding toward James sleeping peacefully in his cradle. "Does he look ruined to you?" "He looks perfect." "That is because he has a good father." "You are a good man, Dalton. The war did not change that, no matter what you think." As winter gave way to spring, Dalton wrote another letter to his brothers, this time including news of James. The response came quickly, full of congratulations and demands for more details. His brother Joseph wrote that he planned to visit that summer to meet Priscilla and his new nephew. "Your family is coming here." Priscilla felt a flutter of nervousness. "What if they do not like me? They will love you. How could they not?" Dalton bounced James on his knee. "Besides, if they do not, that is their problem, not ours." Joseph arrived in June, a tall man with Dalton's build but an easier smile. He swept Priscilla into a hug before she could protest, declaring her exactly what his stubborn brother needed. He doted on James, playing with the baby for hours and regaling them with stories about Dalton as a child. "He was always so serious," Joseph said one evening. "Even as a boy, he took everything to heart. When our dog died, he mourned for months. When he saw our father cry for the first time, he decided he needed to be strong enough for the whole family." He looked at his brother. "I worried about you after the war. You came home so closed off, so distant. I thought we had lost you forever." "You almost did," Dalton admitted. "If not for Priscilla, you would have." Joseph stayed for 2 weeks, and by the time he left, he had extracted promises that they would visit Kansas the following year. "Ma is not getting any younger," he said. "She wants to meet her daughter-in-law and grandson while she still can." After he left, the cabin seemed quieter, but it was a comfortable quiet. They had survived the first year of parenthood, learned to function on little sleep, and fallen even more in love watching each other with their son. As James grew into a toddler, he became a fixture of their mountain life. Dalton fashioned a carrier so he could take the boy along when he checked traps, and Priscilla taught him to help in the garden, though his help mostly consisted of pulling up vegetables before they were ready and eating dirt. One afternoon in October, 2 years after that first meeting in the woodshed, Priscilla stood at the window watching Dalton teach James to stack firewood. The boy was only 20 months old, but he was determined to do everything his father did. As she watched, James picked up a piece of wood nearly as big as himself and staggered toward the pile. Dalton steadied him, helping him place it carefully, then praised his son extravagantly. James beamed, his whole face lighting up with pride. Priscilla felt movement in her belly, the flutter of the second child she was carrying. This baby was not due until spring, but already she could feel the difference. This pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she was not also recovering from starvation and exhaustion. "What are you smiling about?" Dalton asked, coming inside with James on his shoulders. "Just watching my family," she said, "thinking about how lucky I am. We are the lucky ones." He lifted James down, and the boy immediately ran to his mother, hugging her legs. "Right, James, we are lucky to have Mama." "Mama." James agreed enthusiastically, then ran off to play with his wooden blocks. That winter was easier than the first, though also more chaotic with an active toddler in the cabin. James was into everything, requiring constant supervision. But he was also joy personified, laughing at the smallest things, fascinated by the world around him. Their daughter was born in April, during a rainstorm that drummed against the cabin roof. This birth was faster than the first, and within a few hours they had a daughter. They named her Sarah, after Priscilla's mother, and she was delicate where James had been sturdy, with pale skin and blonde hair that came from neither of them. "She must take after my mother," Dalton said, cradling his daughter carefully. "She had hair this color when she was young." James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to hold her constantly, to help feed her, to be involved in everything. Priscilla had worried he might be jealous, but instead, he appointed himself Sarah's protector, watching over her with the same seriousness his father had once shown. As the children grew, the cabin grew with them. Dalton added 2 more rooms, one for the children to share and one that served as a proper kitchen and workroom for Priscilla. They bought more chickens, added a milk cow, and Priscilla expanded her garden every year. When James was 5 and Sarah was 3, they made the trip to Kansas to visit Dalton's family. It was a long journey, but worth it to see the joy on his mother's face when she met her grandchildren. Dalton's brothers were warm and welcoming, their children providing playmates for James and Sarah. "I am glad you came back to us," Dalton's mother said one evening, holding Sarah in her lap. "I thought the war had taken my son forever, but this girl you married, she brought you home to yourself. That is a precious gift." "I know, Ma," Dalton said. "I know how lucky I am." They stayed for a month, reconnecting with family, letting the children experience town life. But as they prepared to leave, Priscilla could see the relief in Dalton's eyes. He was happy to see his family, but the mountains were his home now, and he was ready to return. "You can take the man out of the mountain," she teased as they rode away, "but you cannot take the mountain out of the man." "Is that a complaint?" he asked. "Not at all. I love our mountain too." The years passed peacefully. James grew tall and strong like his father, though with his mother's gentle heart. Sarah was bright and curious, always asking questions, always exploring. They added 2 more children, another boy and another girl, until the cabin was full of noise and laughter and life. Dalton proved to be an excellent father, patient and kind, teaching his children about the land and animals, about respect and responsibility. The nightmares that had once plagued him came less and less often, until whole months would pass without one. The war scars remained, but they no longer defined him. Priscilla often thought back to that night in the woodshed, to how close she had come to dying alone and forgotten. Instead, she had built a life richer than anything she could have imagined. She had a husband who loved her deeply, children who filled her days with joy, and a home that felt safe and right. One evening, many years after that first meeting, they sat together on the porch watching the sunset. The children were inside, the older ones supervising the younger, giving them a rare moment of peace. "You ever regret it?" Dalton asked. "Staying here instead of going to California like you originally planned?" Priscilla leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his arm as she always had. "Not once. California was just a dream, a place I was running to because I had nowhere else to go. But this, you, our family, this is real. This is everything I never knew I needed. You gave me back my life," Dalton said. "I was existing before you came, surviving, but not really living. You taught me how to do that again, how to feel again, how to hope again." "We saved each other," Priscilla said, echoing what he had told her so many years ago. "That is what love does." Inside, they could hear the children laughing, the sound drifting out into the gathering dusk. Tomorrow there would be chores to do, animals to feed, lessons to teach. But tonight, there was just this moment, this peace, this love they had built from nothing but determination and hope. Dalton pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I love you, Priscilla Langford. More today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "I love you too," she whispered. "Thank you for finding me in your woodshed. Thank you for giving me everything. Thank you for staying." The stars began to appear overhead, bright and clear in the mountain air. Inside, one of the children called for them, and they rose together to go back inside, to their family, to the life they had made together. It was not the life either of them had planned, but it was theirs, built on a foundation of love and trust and second chances. As they stepped through the door, Dalton paused and looked back at the woodshed, barely visible in the fading light. That simple structure had changed his life, had brought him everything he never knew he wanted. He sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever providence had guided Priscilla to his mountain, to his woodshed, to him. Then he closed the door and turned to his family, to the noise and warmth and love that filled every corner of the cabin. This was home. This was happiness. This was everything. The years continued to roll by like the seasons, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Their oldest, James, grew into a man much like his father, quiet and strong with a deep love for the mountains. At 20, he announced his intention to build his own cabin on the other side of their property, close enough to help his parents as they aged, but far enough to establish his own independence. Dalton helped him with the construction, the two of them working side by side through the summer months. Priscilla watched them sometimes, seeing so much of the young man Dalton must have been in their son, and her heart swelled with pride and love. Sarah married at 19, a young man from Fort McDowell who had been courting her for 2 years. He was a good man, a carpenter, and he treated Sarah with the respect and love she deserved. The wedding was held on the mountain, all their family and friends making the journey up to celebrate. As Dalton walked his daughter to stand beside her groom, Priscilla saw tears in his eyes. "I am not losing her," he said later that night, "but watching her start her own life, it makes you realize how fast it all goes." "It goes exactly as fast as it should," Priscilla said, holding his hand. "We have done our job well. We raised good, strong, loving children. Now we get to watch them build their own lives, their own loves." Their 2 youngest were still home, keeping the cabin lively. But even they would leave someday, and Priscilla and Dalton would be alone again, the circle coming complete. When James was 25, he brought home a young woman he wanted to marry. Her name was Emma, and she was the daughter of a rancher 2 valleys over. She was strong and practical, with a quick laugh and a kind heart. Priscilla liked her immediately. "She reminds me of you," Dalton said one night after James and Emma had left. "That same determination, that same strength beneath a gentle exterior." "Then she is perfect for him," Priscilla said. The wedding was another mountain celebration held in the meadow near their cabin. As Priscilla watched her son pledge his love to Emma, she thought back to her own wedding, just her and Dalton and the sunrise. Both ceremonies were beautiful in their own way, both sacred and meaningful. Life settled into a new rhythm as grandchildren began to arrive. First James and Emma had a son, then a daughter. Sarah and her husband added twin boys to the growing family. The cabin that had once seemed so isolated was now the center of a small clan, everyone coming together for holidays and celebrations. Dalton built onto the cabin again, adding a large common room where everyone could gather. Priscilla hung photographs on the walls, capturing moments of their growing family. Sometimes she would stand and look at them all, amazed at how much life had come from that one desperate night in the woodshed. As they entered their 50s, both Dalton and Priscilla began to slow down. The hard mountain life had taken its toll, though neither regretted a moment of it. Dalton's joints ached on cold mornings, and Priscilla moved more carefully than she once had. But they were healthy and happy, surrounded by family, and that was more than either had dared hope for in their younger years. One autumn evening, as they sat together watching the sunset as they had done countless times before, Dalton took her hand. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" he asked. "I remember every moment I have spent with you," Priscilla said. "But yes, I remember. I was pregnant with James, scared and excited all at once. You were trying so hard not to hover. I was terrified I would lose you. You never did. You never will." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors paint the sky. Inside, they could hear their youngest daughter preparing dinner, humming a song Priscilla had taught her as a child. In the distance, smoke rose from James's cabin, and they knew he and Emma were settling in for the evening with their children. "I have been thinking," Dalton said slowly, "about writing it all down, our story, how we met, how we built this life, so that the grandchildren will know, so that even after we are gone they will understand where they came from." "I think that is a beautiful idea," Priscilla said, "though you should probably let me help." "Your spelling is atrocious," he laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Deal." They worked on it together over the next months, sitting by the fire in the evenings, remembering and recording. The story of a man who had lost himself and a woman who had lost everything, and how they found each other and built something lasting. When it was finished, they read it aloud to their children and grandchildren one Christmas. all of them gathered in the big common room. There was laughter at the funny parts and tears at the sad ones, and when they finished, everyone sat in silence for a moment. "That is quite a love story," James finally said. "It is our love story," Dalton corrected. "And it is not finished yet." He was right. They had years yet ahead of them. Years of watching grandchildren grow, of celebrating anniversaries and holidays, of living the life they had built together. They grew old together, gray hair and wrinkled skin, but their love never aged. It remained as fresh and vital as it had been that first winter when they realized what they meant to each other. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their family threw them a huge celebration. All their children and grandchildren came, along with friends from Fort McDowell and neighboring ranches. There was food and music and dancing, and as Dalton led Priscilla in a slow waltz, she rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. 30 years, she murmured. Sometimes it feels like forever, and sometimes it feels like just yesterday. I would do it all again, Dalton said. Every moment, every hardship, every joy, all of it just to end up right here with you. Even the part where I was sleeping in your woodshed, especially that part. That was when my real life began. They danced until the music ended, then stood together under the stars, surrounded by the family they had created, the legacy of that one cold October night when a desperate woman sought shelter and found salvation. As Priscilla looked around at all the faces, all the lives that had come from their love, she sent up a prayer of gratitude. For the man who had not turned her away, for the second chance she had been given, for every moment, every struggle, every triumph that had brought them to this place. "What are you thinking?" Dalton asked, following her gaze. "I am thinking that you gave me everything," she said. "A home, a family, a reason to live. Everything I have, everything I am, I owe to you." "No," he said firmly. "We gave each other everything. That is how love works. It is not one-sided. We saved each other, we built this together, and we will finish it together. That is the promise we made, and I intend to keep it." "Forever?" she asked, smiling up at him. "Forever," he confirmed, pulling her close. "In this life and whatever comes after." The celebration continued around them, but for a moment they stood in their own world, just the two of them, as it had been in the beginning. The mountain man and the woman he found in his woodshed, two lost souls who found each other and created something beautiful. Their story was not unique in its elements. Many had faced hardship, many had found love in unexpected places. But it was unique in its particulars, in the specific ways they had come together and stayed together. It was their story, written in sweat and tears and laughter, in children raised and winters survived, in 1,000 small moments that added up to a lifetime. As the stars wheeled overhead and the celebration went on, Dalton and Priscilla held each other close, grateful for every moment they had been given, ready for whatever moments remained. They had found each other against all odds, had built a life from nothing but hope and determination, and had loved each other through every season of their lives. And that, they knew, was everything.